Next curve.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Next Curve's Rethink webcast series on security and trust, where we talk about the hot topics in the world of technology, privacy, and trust that matter. And of course, there's security, right? But we really want to focus on privacy and trust. And today, we're going to be talking about all the crazy stuff that's happening in the world of privacy, especially with in the last 3 weeks. You know, we've had Microsoft Build, we've had Google I/O, we've had OpenAI with their thing, and we have, we had Computex. We had WWDC, Apple's WWDC, which is still happening now. A lot of stuff, and I'm sure the Data Diva has some thoughts on all of this, right? And please, everyone, welcome the Data Diva, Debbie Reynolds of Debbie Reynolds Consulting, LLC. How are you doing, my lady?
I'm well. How are you, Leonard? Happy to be here.
You know what? I sound like a talk show host now, right?
No. You're doing big things. Big things.
No, you're doing big things. And you know what? I want to recognize you because this is weird. We've been doing these collaborations over going on almost 4 years now. Mm-hmm. And when you listen back on the stuff that we did long time ago, it's so interesting to see that everyone's talking about it now. And when we met, people weren't really talking about privacy. I want everyone to understand this, that trust, privacy, these are things that we've been talking about. And, you know, this is the reason why I talk to you. This is why I follow you. This is why I really appreciate the work that you do, is you made that commitment to privacy and this principle of privacy first, especially as it pertains to tech.
Yeah.
And it's so vitally important. And it's great to see the traction that's happening and how privacy is becoming a thing, you know, and a first order, consideration as we especially look forward to this AI insanity.
Right.
that we're looking forward to, right? So
that's true.
Yeah,
very true. Yeah, thank you. I agree. I think a lot of people weren't talking about it. I mean, I've been talking about privacy in the U.S. even before like the General Data Protection Regulation came out. I was the only person I could think of in the U.S. was talking about it even back then. Yeah. And I said, we just have to keep talking about it. And now I feel like we're turning a corner a bit, where companies are sort of waking up and getting the message that, you know, this isn't just about laws or regulation or feel good, rah-rah. You know, it's like about the bottom line and losing clients, right? You want to be able to gain clients. And I say, you know, to companies, especially people who like sell advertising or they aren't trusted with how they handle people's data. Yeah. Like, are you gonna give up $1 to earn a dime, basically?
Yeah.
So that's the question.
Yeah, and you know what? Handling other people's data, I mean, that is privacy. So if you're a privacy first company, and I've been explaining privacy as it pertains to enterprise and especially in the handling of consumer data, it's about the securing of other people's stuff. In other words, R.E.S.P.E.C.T. If you don't do it, you have no respect for your customers, consumers. And I think that's really, really important for everyone to understand, you know, especially if you're an enterprise looking to, deliver societal good, consumer good, whatever you can call it. It's about respect. And if you don't protect privacy and, you know, going beyond what's stipulated by law, like you said, because there really aren't many laws that protect privacy anymore. If there ever was, that, it's about protecting other people's data that you do business with. And so that includes suppliers, it includes partners, and as well as the customer, right? And if you're not doing it, you're not a secure company. And you're definitely not respecting the parties that your business deals with. So, anyways, great amount of praise for the work you do and the thought leadership, because that is true thought leadership, right? You're pioneering the thinking here, and I think everyone should know the difference. No, it's the difference between an influencer and a thought leader is somebody does what you do, right? When what we try, you and I collectively try to do with this program. But hey, let's dig into this. So there's going to be a couple of things that we talk about. Number one, I just want to get your general. I haven't spoken to you in a while, which is but I just wanted to get a sense of what are some of those privacy topics that have popped for you over the last 3 weeks, because there have been all kinds of weird headlines, and then of course we have WWDC, and we'll cover that as a separate topic, because there's a lot of interesting things that came out of the keynote and subsequent sessions and announcements. So please share with me. I mean, just like we're having a conversation over coffee.
Yeah, totally having a conversation over coffee. Probably the biggest two, and I'm sure we're going to cover this anyway, are Microsoft recall and Apple's Apple intelligence.
Yeah.
So those two have been like the really big ones. I think people are talking a lot about OpenAI and their reveal recently, but I think recall kind of took that over, and then Apple sort of even started to trump that even. So those are kind of the three big tech things that have privacy implications that people really talked about. The most surprising one for me was like Microsoft recall. So Microsoft said that in their newest computer is coming out, they're going to have this thing with Copilot and this feature called recall, and recall is supposed to be a way for the computer to remember everything that you've done on it, so that you can ask for certain things back, and they'll bring you back to that moment. But in order to do that, they're like, well, we're gonna take pictures of your screen every 5 seconds, and we're going to store it on a insecure database, and no matter how many profiles that you have on your computer, all the stuff's going to be in one database, and it can be searched, and don't worry, it's going to be on your computer. People just went ballistic about that. So not just geeky people like me, right? People, if that something's going wrong, if you have someone who's like, a Luddite, doesn't really understand technology, and they've heard about recall, right? So I don't think anybody associates collecting more data with security. So I think that was a miscalculation on the part of Microsoft about how they felt that was going to go over. And maybe my view is, and this goes back to us advocating for privacy when nobody was talking about it. Maybe 4 years ago, people probably wouldn't, maybe that would have went over okay a couple years ago, but I don't think that does that now, right? Because we have an unprecedented number of cyber attacks. Companies are, cyber insurance is through the roof. People, company, like if you get breached or something, a company, all they have to do is send a letter, say, hey, we're so sorry, and we'll send you free credit monitoring, right? You just throw those in the trash, because like you probably get breached like 5 or 6 times a year. So the idea that somehow, protect, let's collect more data and trust us. People are not doing that. They don't even want their data in digital systems in that way, right? So I think the farther companies get away from doing things where it seems like it's a direct benefit to the person, I think that's a problem, right? Because I've not heard one person who heard that thought that would benefit them. That's probably the number one thing. It's like, okay, if you come up with something that can benefit me, then tell me. But I don't see how collecting what I'm doing on my screen every 5 seconds is gonna benefit me.
Well, it's supposed to be personalization. This is sort of this personalization benefit that everyone's been talking about, that supposedly on-device generative AI is going to bring. And to a certain degree, that's what it attempts to do. But I recently told a particular someone, a tech company, who had assumed that if it's on device, it's by nature private and secure, and that's not the case. It's all about the implementation, right? And how you design security and privacy into the solution. And it's not simply hardware based. So if you have a trusted execution environment, an enclave, or whatever, you can have all these mechanisms, but if you don't use them properly, and then the applications above it, the system, and more holistically, the end-to-end system doesn't support privacy protection, then none of it makes any difference. And obviously, it's important to have those capabilities, right? But the onus is on the ecosystem and particular vendors that are delivering a solution to stitch all this stuff together, design in privacy and security, and that is not inherent in any, let's say, any particular part of a system. That has to just be part of the overall system design. And I think, so let me list off some of the stuff that actually Microsoft had to backtrack on. I mean, they said listening to and acting on customer feedback, and this is because they discovered, folks kicked the tires on this stuff and found some glaring issues, right? We're updating the setup practice to be, off by default. So they had the stuff on by default.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right, yep. Which is a no-no and not the first principle of privacy first. This is privacy last, right? The other thing is they're going to encrypt the index or the database, and Windows Hello enrollment is required. And so, I mean, these are like basic, security, privacy measures that weren't designed in.
Right. Yeah. And then the database on the computer is going to be for all profiles on the computer. So even if you use Hello, whose face? Whose fingerprint, right? I mean, that's like a whole other thing. But, that it puts the burden on the individual where it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be on the individual. So now I have to take some other additional steps because of something that I asked for to protect myself. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's it's expressive of mindset, right? And so this is where I think the benefit of having folks like you who are advocates of privacy. I mean, this is in the protection and going back to respect, helping companies, especially tech companies, foster respect for security, right? So if it's an enterprise or an individual or a service provider, ensuring that there's mutual protection from all these threats, these growing threats that can compromise and disrupt, lives and businesses, basically.
And then also there's a brand element here, right? So it's not just this one feature. It is a pattern of behavior that consumers notice, and they may trust some companies with that data and maybe not others, right? So I think that all speaks to really thinking about privacy as foundation. Is it part of your brand? Do you just not care? Is it like, you're going to make this dime and give up the fact that, I've heard people say, I've used Microsoft products all these years. I'm going to use Apple products now. Like, not only am I not going to buy the new computer they have coming out, I'm going to replace all my stuff with something else, right? You definitely don't want that, right? Right? Yeah. So that, to me, that's bad. You definitely don't want that. So I think there has to be more of a culture of respecting people's data and understanding what they have to go through. I guess, people's lives have been made more complex, right? There's more complexity in computing for people. And, people already don't know the best ways to protect themselves with computing. So I think creating a situation where, I'm not seeing anyone who equated collecting more data with being a good thing.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Right.
if anything, you're assuming risk,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Totally.
ideally, what you want to do is collect as little as possible, but be able to still, engage with customers and be able to continue to grow your business. And I think there's other ways of doing that than, I mean, I guess the reset that needs to happen is people need to reset their respect level. We're going to bring up respect a lot on this
Yeah.
podcast, I think, and really appreciate uh, the the obligations that they have to protecting privacy, where they might not even been thinking about that. Because, and I talk to a lot of companies, and most of them are just providing lip service when it comes to privacy. And then this is so important as it relates to the things that we've talked about long time ago: responsible AI, not just ethical AI, responsible AI, safe AI, all these things that are kind of like part of that whole, let's call it a discipline or philosophy, that should become part of our culture.
Yeah.
Responsible AI, right?
Well,
And
how about beneficial AI? Right. So
yeah,
AI for the sake of AI, if it doesn't benefit me, why would I want that?
yeah,
Like, why would that benefit me? That doesn't benefit me at all. It's not something that I would care about or want anyway. So, I
mm,
mean, to me, if you're going so far outside of what the consumer who is buying these products wants, then you need to reset anyway.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, but you're making a really great point about the brand thing, because you and I have been advocating. I think you've been telling a lot of your clients, and I've been doing that with mine as well, the companies I advise. Privacy first is going to be a competitive differentiator. And so let's talk about Apple. There's a lot of companies out there that really love to bash Apple as privacy washing, right? Yeah, they're not really privacy XYZ. They're just doing that um, just
well,
for hype sake, right?
companies are in business to make profit, make money, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And I feel like some people feel as though, you can't, if you make money, then you aren't really doing privacy. And I don't think that's
Yeah,
true. I think, you know, Apple has done a very good job. I really like their products and I like the way that they go about doing things around privacy.
mm,
Again, they aren't perfect. Sometimes they make missteps, but this was not one of them. So
yeah,
I think they've done an excellent job on their Apple Intelligence because, you know, the things we've been talking about,
yeah,
computing on device, not sharing your details outside the device. They're actually brokering these deals or brokering the communication flow between things that happen on your device and things you send off device, like this OpenAI thing that they are partnering with them. I actually saw that keynote where they talked about all the privacy features. The
yeah.
word privacy came up a lot, right? And that's something you
Oh
don't
yeah,
really hear from a
yeah.
lot of other companies, and that's very important. Also, I don't know. I actually had seen some of the people's commentary before I actually saw the keynote. And I've seen some of the articles, and they made it seem like everything that Apple's coming out with is related to OpenAI, and I was like, so not true. I'm
No,
like, it's like one or two features on there that relate to OpenAI. The other
yeah,
stuff is just enhancements that they're doing with their own artificial intelligence, which
yeah,
I thought was really good. But
yeah.
I felt like okay, the grown-ups have entered the room in terms of how to implement artificial intelligence.
The
So I
data
was really
diva has
happy.
entered the room.
Yeah. So I was happy to see what Apple was doing because to me, if let's say technology is like a singing group like Gladys Knight and the Pips, like
Yeah,
people want AI to be Gladys Knight, but AI is really the pips, right? It's like the
yeah,
background. So that's what Apple is doing. So they're like, okay, we have these products. Let's see where we can leverage AI
mhm,
to, enhance or change or update, some features that are already there. And I think they're doing a really good job of that. And they're making sure that you understand, like, this
Yeah.
is encrypted. This is how this data gets passed. This is how we ask you your permission if we do X, Y, or Z. And that, to me, that's the type of transparency that consumers really want.
Right.
That's what they really want to know. And like a lot of the features that they talked about, there are maybe things on there that maybe I may not use, but it's there if I want to, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not being forced to use it,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm not being forced to use Siri if I don't want to use Siri, or if I don't need the feature where it's going to help me rewrite an email. I don't have to do that, right? But they're just saying, hey, we're building in these capabilities. If you want to use it, you can, as
Yeah.
opposed to, we're going to just, opt you in everything, and then you have to use, this thing this way.
Yeah, and I think that's an important, it's an important point. I mean, privacy first is you make sure that you ask any, consent for anything that could potentially present a privacy risk or that trade that you're talking about, right? The barter and providing consent. And usually in the setup of most Apple stuff, that consent is asked for. Again, going back to they're not perfect, they don't do it perfectly, but by default, for the most part, right? Or their cultural default is to do that. And you're making a great point. There was a lot of confusion around the OpenAI stuff. People thought that Apple Intelligence was based on OpenAI's ChatGPT, and that is not the case.
No.
They developed, like you said, their own LLM and diffusion model for the core features and capabilities of Apple Intelligence. And their relationship with OpenAI is quite apparently, right, arm's length. They only come in
Oh,
with
absolutely.
plugin. And I think you made the point in one of your posts. There's options. There are going to be options for other other, what do they call them? World model guys to come in
Yeah.
and place their
Yeah.
particular application link in the drop down menu, right?
Yeah. The playground, I believe that's what it's called.
Right. Well, there's image playground. That's
Yeah.
one thing. But then, there's I think it's called rewrite. Yeah. In both
Right.
of those,
Yeah.
you're going to have options to go outside of Apple Intelligence, but then they ask you, do you really want to do this?
Right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
really
Right.
need to do this because they're
Right.
not taking away the option. And
Mhm.
I think that's really in many, many ways is very, very smart, actually, because, one of the things you and I have talked about is the risk of associated with generative AI because of the general low reliability, right? That presents risk to the user. And I think that insulates Apple from a lot of that risk, but then actually kind of
Yeah.
offloads that to the user.
Well,
But
it does.
that's
But
their
yeah, I mean,
choice
that's
at that
fine.
point,
Right,
right?
right, yeah, right. And I thought it was really interesting the way that they, like in their playground when they were talking about images, the
Yeah.
types of images or that they allow you to create on device. They're not letting you do these photorealistic, deep fakey type videos,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or pictures. They're going to be things that are obviously not real. Whether they be sketches or cartoons or whatever. So I thought that was really
Ah,
smart for them to sidestep that. And they're basically like, okay, if you want something different, do you want us to pass this query off to
yeah.
ChatGPT? You say yes or no, basically. So,
Right, right, right. Yeah. Which I think, I mean, I guess it's an admission that there's nothing you can do to stop the advancement of generative AI, which is fair. I mean that it's going to go as fast or slow as it's going to. But in terms of consumer choice or the customer's choice, they're providing it with a degree of protection. I think that I think is it's an interesting paradigm that they're introducing. I don't think anyone else does that.
well, it's smart because to me, that's the way advancements really get adopted by the public, where it,
Yeah,
it is actually these smaller incremental steps as opposed to these gigantic leaps. And you relate it to something that people are either already doing right now
yeah,
or things that they want to do, but it's like in their things that are more practical, right?
Yeah.
So like, hey, you have to pick up your mom from the store and you have, you're, 10 minutes away or something like that, right?
Mhm.
So being able to pull that information together for some people that may be helpful. I'm not sure if that's a feature that I would use, but I like the way that they're not saying, okay, you have to use it in these new ways. They're like, look, you get this new device, we have these new
Yeah.
capabilities, and look at all the cool things you can do, as opposed to you just, forget classical computing, everything is AI all the time, and that's not what they're trying to go for. So to
Yeah.
me, from a AI adoption standpoint, it's probably the best that you can ask for, without people having to go out and buy different tools or learn how to learn new things. Do it at least incrementally, right? So you're
Yeah.
using applications that you already know how to use, but maybe it has more functions and features than you had before.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did you think about privacy cloud, privacy
Yeah,
cloud
private cloud.
compute? Which,
Oh, I loved it. I loved it because so basically they're saying, well, two things. One is we know that these smartphones are getting more powerful, right? With these
Mhm.
more chips and different things, and the fact that you can actually do this on this device, is the reason why you could do that is because of the chips and because of the fast compute that you can have on there. But they're saying, well, if you're doing a task and we know that the load is too much for your device, then we offload some of that computing to this private cloud. I think that's the best way you can do it because it's more seamless to
Mhm.
the user as opposed to, throw all of your stuff in this cloud that you don't know, who's looking at what. And they're like, okay, give us the request. We'll kind of manage the load or manage the compute for you because you may not even know that you're in the your computing question or whatever you
Yeah.
wanted to do uh may not be, your device may not be capable, but I think extending that is brilliant.
Yeah. And I think the mechanics of it are the things that I'm really curious about, because they threw around a lot of buzzwords that sound really great, and what they suggest in terms of what they've done is super impressive. Again, at a cursory level, the devil's in the detail, but it seems like they've taken kind of an approach where it's almost like graphics offload, to this
Yeah.
cloud. That was like the whole cloud gaming paradigm. But actually, Apple has been doing that on Apple TV for quite some time. I don't think this is widely known, but they're actually very, very savvy at edge computing and
Yeah.
cloud-based computing, and let's say device compute augmentation with these various offload schemes. And I suspect that's kind of what they're doing. But this is not a net new for them in terms of a technical competency area, but how they do this with these language models and diffusion models and doing this distributed AI or hybrid AI type of thing, I think is really interesting, and how that supports privacy, in detail, like, under the hood, is something that I'm really, really curious about. But, they have my imagination going.
Yeah, I was impressed.
Exactly.
I was impressed
Yeah.
because they answered all my questions. Because I'm looking at it with a more critical eye, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what about this? And they answered those questions for me. So, I've been, I guess, a feature that they've had for a while. I've been really impressed with is that it's the hide my email thing,
Mhm.
where you sign up for something and they give a fake email, and the
Oh,
way
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
the technology behind the way that they do that, they kind of broker that deal. They're kind of extending that analogy
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
these other things. They're like, okay, let's do this situation where, the person isn't passing all their information. We're going to be that middle ground,
Yeah.
and we're going to pass this back, and then we're going to pull this back, and then we're going to
Yeah.
do this service. And to
Yeah.
me, that's like really powerful that they're doing that. And I really like the way that they're thinking about that because they're really thinking about the user and the user experience, and also creating that protection that people really,
Yeah.
really want. That to me, that's the $1 billion opportunity.
Yeah.
Companies that really want to protect users because the user cannot protect themselves. We
You
don't
keep
have the
saying,
knowledge.
yeah, but you keep selling $1 billion. I think it's a
It's a
trillion
trillion
dollar.
dollar. I think it is. I think I
Come
agree. I
on,
think it
billion
is a
doesn't mean
trillion.
anything anymore.
I think it is $1 trillion idea. People need this, right?
Yeah.
And so Apple's really stepping into that place. They really make sure, they said privacy. I don't know, they probably said it 20 times in this presentation.
Yeah.
And for a company to say that and not have to be legally obligated to say it, I think is very interesting
Yeah.
that they put that front and center. And I hope that is the
Yeah.
the way that companies will figure out, hey, this is really important to people.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't it. Maybe I didn't understand how important it was before, but that people definitely are saying it's important to us now.
Yeah, and the know-how to architect these privacy first architectures and solutions is a differentiator. It's something you have to develop. I mean, I don't think what you just outlined with the email masking. I know that Google and Microsoft do some of this stuff, but really leading with that, it is a technical advantage, I think. And if you can do that from end to end, that's even a bigger advantage. And I think that's actually what a lot of people are starting to talk about now. It's they're asking the Android and Windows world, how are you guys going to do this?
Right.
Obviously, it's going to be a challenge, but this is what I tell everybody I deal with in the Android Windows world. This is the opportunity,
It
because that
is.
universe is very fragmented.
Mhm.
Yes, it's going to be difficult to emulate and follow Apple, but realize that this is the opportunity. If you're playing in that ecosystem, how do you
Yeah.
solve these problems for the consumer, right? And then how do you lead in that ecosystem by espousing privacy first and really making that part of your differentiation as you're working with partners and you're delivering solutions to the Android, Windows customers, right?
Well, not only that, they're offloading what Apple is doing. They're minimizing they're minimizing risk for the user, but they're also minimizing risk for themselves, right?
Yeah.
So companies, they talk about risk all day. It's like,
Yeah.
so you can do this in a way that minimizes risk for yourself,
Yeah.
right? And that is worth a lot of money.
Well, then, developers as well, because for developers, it's not easy for them to design privacy into everything. And if you're working with a development platform and ecosystem that already has that built in, just like security is difficult, you know? Developers don't want to have to build all this stuff from scratch. The infrastructure, the code base, and and all the stuff that you need to provide that security foundation. That costs a lot of money, right? And to have that privacy as well as security there built in, that's a big benefit for developers as well because it reduces their risk exposure and the
Yeah.
amount of investment they need to make into making sure that when their applications land on device, that they're secure and privacy protected.
Yeah, I know Apple also introduced a lot of APIs for developers. So I'll be very interested to see what those requirements are going to be
Yeah,
for people who
yeah,
play in those spaces. Because I think what they're architecting will be very informative for other
yeah,
companies as they try to take that same path. What we're facing here is a situation, let's say many years ago, when people were trying to decide between, let's say, an Apple computer or a Microsoft computer, it was basically a price thing, right?
Yeah.
So one costs more than the other, so we'll use this one, or I know more about this one than the other. But what we're seeing now is that these devices are almost on par with each other,
Mm-hmm.
right, in terms of cost. And then one is more privacy preserving, and one maybe isn't as much,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where it's more work for you as an individual. So I think that I think the winds are changing around that. And so I think this time around, with all things being equal, I think a lot more people are gonna start buying Apple devices, especially if they feel like they can plug into this ecosystem and it saves them more time, right?
Yeah.
Less risk, less headache. They can do a lot more on device, as we see a lot more people are doing mobile things. And
Yeah.
so I think it'll be, for me, I've fought that for a while, so I think I may actually switch on over myself. So yeah.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts? Any final things that you want to mention before
Yeah.
we retire?
Well, it's good to have this conversation going. It really feels good that, it's so funny because I recently looked back at some of our work that we've done over the years. So I'm like, yeah, we said that. Oh my God, we told them to do that, right? So we're just amplifying the message that we've been saying for many years. And thankfully, some companies are waking up to the fact that, privacy isn't just a legal requirement. It's not just a feel good, have thing, it really can have a bottom line impact. And we're going to see that play out, I think, in the
Yeah.
next weeks and months.
Weeks and months.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty aggressive. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. I think so. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah. And my final word to our audience, this is opportunity. This isn't a bad thing. This is actually a really good thing for consumers. It's part of responsible AI. So if you really want to espouse responsible AI, uh, hey, this is what you got to do, and it's the opportunity, and this is how you do. I think the first movers are going to be the ones that differentiate themselves in the marketplace and increase their brand value, and then also gain consumer and customer mind share. Because again, this is all about R.E.S.P.E.C.T, respect. You
It
know,
is.
and that's what you should do to for your customers. You should respect them and protect them. So hopefully, everyone takes all that we've shared in a very positive light, because that we're here to help. And Debbie, keep doing what you're doing, because you know what, this is all about protecting individuals
It
and
is.
organizations, and it's really important work that you're doing. So thank you so much once again for joining me on this collaboration. Really appreciate
Yeah.
it very much.
Well, this has
Yeah.
been fun, and thank you. You've been an early supporter of my work, and I love the fact that, to me, it's fun that we can go back and say, I told you so without being snarky about it, right? Like, hey, we said this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, geez. No, I look back and it's like 3, 4 years ago. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. So no, I love being on this journey, and I'm sure it's going to go on for quite much longer. It's going to go on forever, because privacy is always going to be a challenge, and it's a mindset that has plenty of legs for adoption. So
That's true.
and but hey, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Data Diva. If you'd like to find out all the wonderful things that the Data Diva is doing, Debbie, you want to share your contacts and how people can reach you and tap into your wonderful insights on privacy and all things tech?
Oh, sure. So you can reach me on my website, DebbieReynoldsConsulting.com. You can definitely reach me on LinkedIn. Just type in Data Diva Debbie Reynolds. My name will pop right up. And so, yeah, I'm always out in the media talking and doing different things. So, yeah, happy to chat.
Yes, and please do. She's weekly dose minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so everyone, remember to like, share, subscribe to NextCurve at www.next-curve.com. We have a YouTube channel, and we are also publishing our podcasts on Buzzsprout, so you can take us on your walk, your daily commute, and listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. And Debbie, we're going to have to do this again very soon, maybe a recap or a retrospection on how things go a few weeks down after all these announcements have been made.
Yeah.
And we'll see you soon. Take care.
I'm excited. Thank you. Take care.